panelists. Can I invite you to join me on the stage? And we have three distinguished panelists on this Impact Showcase. Duke Dispanada Disco, Duke, Chief Executive of Ma Feng Long Foundation, and Dr. Liang and Helen. Yes, please join me. Helen Montfort is the President and CEO of Climate Works Foundation, and Dr. Gabriel Liang is the Executive Director of the Hong Kong Jockey Club Charity Trust. So it's a very important session because the three speakers here represent success. And they represent also the impact not just at the country level or at the continent level, but they represent the success and impact, scalable impact at the global level. And I think it's very important to show, well, everybody probably want to know how did you get there and also how they can get there like you did with your foundation, with your work. House rule. I will give each one of you 5 minutes to introduce the great work you've been doing, and 5 minutes only. Allow me to interrupt if you go over time. And then we'll have 15 minutes to take questions from the floor, all the secrets they want to share. So let me start with Helen, please.
Thank you very much, Lee, and it's wonderful to be with you here today and actually exploring all these opportunities for new partnerships to tackle these major challenges we face. From the climate side, we see this as something which is a major challenge, a whole of society challenge. We're seeing the impacts, the devastating impacts of flood events, wildfires, heat waves, the hottest summer we've ever seen globally this last summer. And we need to come together as a society to tackle these. So that means we can't just leave it to environment ministers or climate ministers. We need governments, businesses, civil society, and philanthropy. And as we've heard, philanthropy can play a truly catalytic role, really investing in early stage and risky adventures, looking for some of these solutions, but then also working together with the public and private sector to scale them up, to get the financing we need and get the action going. And I want to give an example that links to this very, very hot summer that we've just had. And this is about the need for clean cooling that's accessible and affordable for all, but can actually also help to tackle the climate mitigation challenge to bring down emissions. At ClimateWorks, we've been working since 2008 with partners around the world, working in 50 countries with over 750 partners on the ground and with multiple funders to look for these kinds of solutions where we can come together and tackle the challenges. Now, cooling is a particular challenge. We're seeing the heat waves. We expect that we're going to have another 3 billion air conditioners coming on stream between now and 2050. And in most cases, there's a vicious cycle here at play. The fans we have today, the air conditioners we have today are incredibly inefficient in most cases, and they are drawing on fossil fuel use. They are powered by fossil fuels. So this is leading to, even as we try and cool homes and offices and factories, we're actually leading to more and more emissions, which is worsening the challenge we have. And what we're trying to do is turn this into a virtuous cycle instead. How can we use the solutions which can bring down the emissions, but help people to get the cooling solutions they need? At the moment, we're working with the ASEAN Center for Energy to actually look at solutions here in the Asia region and help to put those forward. And already we have solutions that are going to be 30% more efficient, and Singapore and China have taken leadership in adopting these. That's fantastic and moving forward. But we need to go further and we need to go a lot faster. So back in 2018, Philanthropy put out a challenge, a global cooling prize, to look for 5 times more efficient air conditioners. How can we actually make that big leap to 5 times more efficient? RMI was part of that, the Indian government, their Directorate for Science and Technology, and Mission Innovation. Now, the fabulous thing that we're seeing is that not only did this lead to spurring manufacturers to find these solutions that would be 5 times more efficient, but now we're moving into a phase where they're looking at the testing, the rapid testing, trialing of these, making sure that these are working, and starting to scale them and bring them to market. And again, philanthropy is playing a key role to help them do that and do that faster than what we'd otherwise see. This has been tested in India, which is one of the regions which, of course, is facing the greatest cooling challenge. So it's been tested in India, but if you actually take these 5 times more efficient air conditioners globally, we could save as much as 68 gigatons of CO2 emissions per year. That's more than we emit each year globally right now. So between now and 2050, we could save as much as a whole year's worth of emissions just from these cooling solutions. So the Global Cooling Efficiency Accelerator is now working to bring these innovative solutions to market, to scale, to jumpstart these solutions. We're doing that together with partners around the world, including doing extensive lab testing and analysis. And what we have now is one manufacturer that's actually indicated by the end of this year, they will have these taken to market. The next step is going to be working together with businesses, with governments around the world to set the standards to actually make these the primary ones that are used everywhere. How do we actually move that forward on a wide scale? So philanthropy has really played such a critical role in this from the start, setting the challenge up front, getting the innovation moving, to starting to do the lab testing, the proving that these solutions can work, and then taking them to scale. We know that cooling, clean cooling, is absolutely vital. It's vital for health, it's vital for our children. In South Asia, we know that 460 million children, 76% of children here, 460 million children are at risk from extreme heat events. So we need to take these to scale. And if we do this, we can find solutions not only for the climate challenge, but actually for people today. So excited to be here and working with all of you on these kinds of solutions that are already delivering on the ground and can do so much more.
Thank you, Helen, for sharing a very powerful example that is already making an incredible impact. Let me move on to Dr. Liang. Tell us about Hong Kong Jockey Club Charity Trust, which is the #1, the largest in Asia, and one of the 10 largest in the world.
Thank you. If I may have my slides. Wonderful. Thank you. So I have about 12 slides, so I will fly through them in 5 minutes. This really just tells you a little bit about who we are. On the left side of the panel, I think is the most interesting bit because it shows the club as an integrated business model. We are, unlike most charity foundations, a cash-based charity mostly. We do have sizable reserves, but actually most of the money that we try to mobilize comes from the business side of the Jockey Club. We are also a membership club, and therefore they actually serve as our governance structure. And ultimately, we are a sports club, and our sport happens to be horse racing. I shall not belabor anything other than that particular panel on the left side, other than to say that we've been averaging somewhere around 5 or 6 billion Hong Kong, and in the most recent season that ended just in June 30th this year, we were able to support and approve 7.3 billion Hong Kong dollars, which is roughly just under 1 billion US. Now, this is an impact showcase, so I thought that what I might do is to explain a little and share some of our own experiences in impact measurement. And essentially what I will be doing is focusing on step 2 of these 7 steps. So that's really the nitty-gritty of how we go about thinking about impact even before we start thinking about funding a project. We take a fairly systematic, transparent approach with all of our grantees as we work up any grant. These are the steps that we follow. And so how we think about it is this. This is the entire universe of having an impact or bringing about impact in society. There is obviously the government, there is obviously the private sector, and then there is us, whether it's the Quangos, the NGOs, and then the funders. And depending on which context and which country or city, you will see, and the reason that these two bubbles are bobbing up and down is, depending on what kind of social system you have, one may be larger than the other in terms of the government or the private sector. But let's focus in on the philanthropy world, which is what we are about. So what we do with each project, I've already said, is that at the project level, we have a set of impact measures or outcome measures, not just output. And then our task and what we have been able to do in the last year or two is to aggregate up from individual project level to the programmatic level. And at that meso level, I'm going to show you what some of our key outcome and impact measures are. And then we're now on the road to exploring how we aggregate up from each of our funding programs up to the foundation level. That is, for the whole trust, how are we thinking about impact? Mm-hmm. Now, here we go. So what we are really about is building capacity and capabilities for our beneficiaries. Our grantees are the intermediaries. We are the funder. And to us, in order to have capacity and capabilities, you have to have good health, you have to have good social relationships, well-being, and financial resources. And you also have to think about what you're doing to the macro environment, not just what we typically think about the green environment. And you will see that we've got 6 funding programs, and for each of them we've got sub-themes. And then for each of those colored programs, you will see something is written on the y-axis, that is, you have to turn 90 degrees to actually read it. Those are the metrics that we're using to measure impact at the programmatic level. And we've chosen them from all of the project metrics that we use for that particular program, which are actually at the bottom. And that's really the hierarchy of impact measurement that we've been able to suss out and to explore and experiment with so far. And that really is my take home to you. And I see some of you actually taking your cameras out. I welcome that. Please do, or for those of you who are online, take a screenshot. And for those of you who have a camera, take a screenshot. And what I would be looking for is feedback. Is this resonant with what you're doing? Are we completely off track? What do you think? And let's use this as a platform, the PAA, to exchange and share ideas so that we can bring more impact to our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lam. Very important, because when you talk about impact without standard or without measurement, that can easily get into hollow talk. And now move on to Duke and tell us about your foundation and the wonderful work you do.
Okay, so Swadee Krap. I work for a foundation in Thailand. Our foundation, the founder is actually Princess Sinakarin. She is the mother of the late King Rama IX of Thailand. When we started, this is the project area. We started 35 years ago. The problem we were trying to solve at that time was opium cultivation, environmental degradation, and a lot of the human-based issues. What we quickly come to realize is that when we're trying to go about solve an area-based problem, poverty and lack of opportunity are at the core of what we're trying to solve. So we can't really solve, particularly in Thailand and Southeast Asia, you can't really solve environmental issues if you don't actually solve people's problem. And we have the 3 S's model where we try to move people through different stages of development, starting off with survival stage where they don't know where the next meal would come from. And then gradually we build the capacity, getting to the stage where they're starting to have savings, being able to invest in the future, invest in education and so on. And last stage is sustainability, where we focus very much on self-governance, ability to look after themselves, and ability to withstand the external forces of economic environment and so on. Economic model is very, very important. We built our social enterprise up based on the products that are being able to cultivate in the area. Coffee and macadamia, adding the values. We operate 13 branches, coffee shops throughout Thailand. We have handicraft product where we came from producing ethnic-based product to adapt more of a fashion, market-driven approach. We have horticulture because people on the hills, they have green thumbs, they're good at growing things. And of course, when you grow things, you have established a tourism business where we have annually roughly about 600,000 visitors visiting our project in Chiang Rai province in northern part of Thailand. Partnership model is also very, very important. So we work with a lot of the partners in different countries. IKEA, Japan is also quite big. We work with United Nations, Office of Drugs and Crime. And I would say that over time, we are able to transform the project area. This is the same, a photo of the same village taken in 1987 and the photo taken recently. So you can see how the hill has transformed. And one of the things that we always looked at is for the money we spent, what do the people get? And we try to measure them as to the human, as to the people as possible. So, for example, we are annually we're not very big. We generate about 22 million US dollar of income. We have been financially self-sustained through the sales of our products since the year 2000. We're able to increase the income of the people 20-fold, and all the profits goes back towards important things such as community building, education, where we work with 10 schools in project-based learning and Montessori teaching. Socially, 99% of all children aged between 7 to 15 years old are enrolled in all the schools in the project area. We continue to try to provide jobs for all the people, covering 6 ethnic groups, 150 square kilometers, 11,000 people. Environmentally, we're able to revive and maintain the forest from 28% up to 86%. The remaining are actually for housings and infrastructures. We are zero waste to landfill since 2018, and we have been carbon neutral since 2020. And 49% of our products are circular products. We've used our knowledge and expand our work in different parts of the world. We work in Indonesia, we work in Afghanistan, and we are working primarily now in Myanmar. And I think that in more recent times, we were trying to find ways where we can engage with private sectors. And one of the things that we're trying to do now is actually scaling our business and working with private sectors towards net zero pathway. So one of the things that we have done now is how can we best utilize forest protection, biodiversity protection to allow community to earn more income, and at the same time trying to meet the requirements of private sectors in trying to meet their net zero pathway through nature-based solutions. And just recently, we've just closed the forest protection and biodiversity protection project covering an area of 16,000 hectares just last month, and the next year we're going to launch our 4th programs which covers 20,000 hectares. So I think this is some of the things that we're working at. Thank you.
Thank you, marvelous. And it's a very vivid example that how you can transform marginalized society through social services, capacity building, and you amplify and use that modeling elsewhere as well. So we will have the rest of the time for questions from the floor. I got several already. I'll pose one to each one of you. Number one is, do you think impact investing has the potential to outgrow philanthropy and grants? Probably I'll give that to Dr. Leung. And then, how do your organizations involve communities in decision-making for where to channel your funding? I think that's perfect for Duke. How do you involve the communities in building that? And also considering that it's important for philanthropy to be long-term commitment, can you share your organization's strategies for impact that endures beyond the initial stage? I'll give that to Helen. So who will go first? Dr. Liang, probably?
Sure. Impact investing, has it the potential to outgrow philanthropy? Well, I think, with all due respect, I think the question is probably challenging me to give the following rebuttal first. I think that it's actually a moot question, because the question implies that impact investing, and I assume that it's social impact investing you're talking about, because everybody invests for impact. Monetary and financial rewards is presumably why most people do investing. So if you think that social impact investing is in a competitive ecoscape with philanthropy, then I'm afraid I beg to differ, because they're two completely different things. They do overlap a little bit, but those two Venn diagrams have very little overlap. And so I don't think we are talking about head-to-head competition, and therefore there isn't that ecological predator-prey dynamics. But I do think that there's a reason why particularly family offices are quite fond of thinking about both philanthropy and social impact investment as they consider their overall strategy. And that's simply about allocation of capital. That is not because the two things have anything directly related to each other. And finally, just let me say that I have yet to see any social impact investment fund that doesn't have an out-and-out traditional or conventional component to it that actually pulls up the ROI so as to make possible the social impact investing bit of it. And that, to me, is probably not where it should end up. It tells me that that model is still in evolution, because if the ROI is necessarily not as good, financially speaking, as your non-social impact investments, then you should be thinking about measuring it with a different metric and actually quantifying quite rigorously what is the aggregated ROI you're looking for. Or you might as well just pull out of social impact investing altogether and simply say, this proportion or this percentage of my portfolio is for philanthropy, and I'm going to do that, without worrying about actually balancing your ROI so that the average is respectable.
Anything to add from the two of you? Or if not, Duke, on the communities?
Okay, well, I think community decision, involvement in decision making is extremely crucial for long-term sustainability of the project. So from day one, I think you need to involve them. First, I think you got to get them to understand what it is that you're trying to do, and you have to have the buy-ins from the community. Normally, what we do is quite low-tech. So we would go into the community, we would give them, 5 peanuts, 10 peanuts, or 10 rocks, and then we would ask them to prioritize their needs, and they would just write them down, and then each of them would have to vote, and then from there we get the discussion going of, what causes, let's say that they don't have income, so what causes the lack of income? Is it because they cannot grow? Why can't they grow? Is it because of the soil, bad soil? Is it because of lack of water? And then from there, gradually people the community would then understand what it is that they need to do, and they'll be able to come to some sort of prioritizing the needs, and working with our team, then we can then set up programs, funding allocations, and we also work with the community, so they need to also engage with us. We won't just go in there and do it for them. What we'll do is we would work with them and gradually equip them with the knowledge so that they can work. They know, they learn by doing, and at the same time they'll be able to manage the program after we exit. So I think this is one of the extremely important factor in implementing any kind of development programs on the ground.
And Helen, how do you move the projects beyond the initial stage and have long-lasting impact?
Thanks very much. And this is a really important point because obviously you can come in one stage, start something off, and then just leave it and see what happens. But we know that's often a challenge. And this is where philanthropy can play such an important role, both at the early stages. And that example I gave of impact, the impact we're already seeing in the clean cooling sector, but also how we need to continue to see it through is a perfect one. Initially, philanthropy was there and was able to put out the challenge and do a prize to really incentivize some of the cooling manufacturers to come forward with solutions that would be 5 times more efficient, really bringing down the emissions associated with cooling and also looking for affordable solutions. So philanthropy was able to do that. Now, we got those solutions coming forward. Once you do, you could say, oh, I'll back out and see what happens. But we know there's also the valley of death when you're doing research and development. And once you have the solutions, often they never actually make it to market. So again, helping to speed up that and ensure that these can get to market by helping to support some of the testing, some of the registration, et cetera, we help to move that forward to the next stage. As those come forward to the market, that next phase is really how we can help work with regulators to develop the standards which would make these widespread and help to work with the private sector, the companies that are delivering these, the finance institutions that'll need to help support this to really scale it up at a wide scale. So it's going from just the initial more risky undertaking, trying to get the innovation going, all the way through that to actually get it up to a point where it can be widely adopted around the world. At that point, you don't really need philanthropy anymore. You've got the markets and you've got the governments that are moving forward and can take it to scale. Would this have happened without philanthropy? Maybe, maybe not, and maybe 20 years later. We don't have that time to wait. So being there and staying there through these various phases is absolutely essential.
So being a facilitator and happily exit when you can. Well, we have slightly than 2 minutes left, and one last question I hope all of you can share that, in your opinion, what's the most significant challenges and opportunities in the realm of philanthropy and impact investing in the years ahead? So we can compare your answers. Dr. Leong is nodding, so I'll start from you.
I think it's really finding and contributing to the philanthropic commons, and that is why it's so important to come together. I just came from 2.5 days in Hong Kong. I spent yesterday at a couple of other philanthropy conferences here in Singapore and here today. And I think it's so important that we actually direct our efforts in synergy with each other to complement, not to overlap, but also recognizing the limits of philanthropy. If you compare whatever we do and in whatever impact area that we choose with government funding alone, let alone private funding, we are probably less than 1%. And so we cannot possibly scale or have any impact unless we pick and choose wisely, and that's usually at the frontier in niche areas or in neglected areas, and we are but a catalyst. Yep. And therefore you have to pick and choose and then go across common friends wherever they may be, and that probably is the way to go and the greatest challenge that we all face.
Thank you. Being a catalyst. And Helen?
Let me just actually build on that. I very much agree. Philanthropy has a catalytic role, but we know that no particular sector on its own will be able to move forward and tackle the climate crisis in the speed and scale that we need. So how can we work together as philanthropy with that catalytic, small finance, but catalytic role together with the public sector, together with the private corporates and civil society to really find the solutions, the acupressure points, I think somebody was saying, that can deliver impact on the ground. And that's one of the reasons, I think, one of the big opportunities and the challenges is how do we work together, come together, pool resources, learn from each other, compare strategies, and deliver something that's much bigger by working all together. And it's one of the reasons I think I'm so excited by the Philanthropy Asia Alliance and what they're able to do with the calls to action that we already heard, and also working together with the WEF Gaia initiative, which is really looking for the partnerships that can deliver this in the most efficient and most impactful way.
Thank you. So work together and build alliances. And Duke, last word, briefly.
I'm not going to deviate from the answers of the previous two speakers. I think time is a big challenge. Scale is another challenge, and I think role is also something that we need to look at. For me, based on the conversation that I've had with the WEF people, the philanthropy can actually be the catalyst of a lot of the new project. It is funding that does not look particularly for financial returns. And then when the program gets going, and then that's where the impact investor can come in, and that I think can also lift the program and then get it up to the next level.
Yeah. So moving along the journey together.
Yes.
So with that, please join me in thanking our speakers in sharing their wonderful insights today. Thank you very much.